Purim is right around the corner, and although there's a lot of videos telling the story of the Megillah, like, hey, I'm Achashverosh and I rule the whole Persian Empire. I'm Haman and I think it's time to kill the Jews. We have to stop this. Hashem! So yes, thanks to those amazing videos that are much better than that embarrassing few seconds you just watched, people know the story of Purim. But what's the historical context? What was happening in the land of Israel back then, and what could we learn from that? Let's go find out. 2,600 years ago, the Babylonians destroyed Jerusalem, and most of the Jewish people living in Israel exiled to Bavel, including the families of Esther and Mordechai. But very quickly, the Babylonian Empire loses their power, and the Persian Empire takes over. And that's good news for the Jews, because that Cyrus, the Persian king, decides to allow the Jewish people to return to Israel, return to Jerusalem, and build Beit HaMikdash, build the temple. This is mentioned in the book of Ezra straight out. But the amazing thing is that in 1879, in the ancient city in Iraq, they found a piece of clay that says on it, the charter of Cyrus the Great. And right there, he says, word after word, that all the nations could go back to where they came from and build their temples, including the Jewish people. You would think that all the Jewish people want to return to their homeland, but that's not what happened. Most of the Jews stay in Babylonia. Only a couple of tens of thousands come back with Zerubbabel to Israel. They come back, and when they get to the city of David, all they see is ruins. Everything was destroyed, and they decide it's time to start building Beit HaMikdash. This wall right over here is a wall that was built in the time of Mordechai and Esther when they returned to Jerusalem. But there's a problem, because that the nations living here didn't really like the idea of Jews returning to their land. And so they send a letter to none other than the king Achashverosh that came after King Koresh, Cyrus, and tell him, stop the Jews from building in Jerusalem. We gotta stop it. This is not good. And Achashverosh gets persuaded, and he stops the building. And that's where the story of Purim happens. I just want to make sure you guys don't think I'm making this up. This is all straight out from Tanakh. And in the reign of Achashverosh, at the start of his reign, they drew up an accusation against the inhabitants of Judah and Jerusalem. Ezra, Daled 4, Vav 6. And since it says straight out in one of the other verses in Ezra that one of the people that returned to Jerusalem right away was Mordechai, the question is, had he end up back in Shushan, in the Persian capital? There's those who say that he went back to stop the decree of Achashverosh against building Jerusalem. Now that we know the historical context of Purim, it kind of makes you wonder, why do we even celebrate Purim? All the Jews could have returned to the land of Israel. They decided not to. Why did Hashem go out of his way to save them? And what are we celebrating? Even after the fact, most of the Jews decided to stay in Bavel. But if you think about it, maybe that is the miracle of Purim. That even if the Jewish people decide they don't want to make Aliyah back to Israel, we want to stay in Bavel, we want to stay outside of Israel, Hashem isn't going to give up on the Jewish people, and he'll make it that in one way or another, the Jewish people are going to be redeemed and are going to come back to their homeland, to Israel. And the question that we have to ask ourselves is this going to happen without us? Or are we going to be part of the story? Purim Sameach. By the way, I was just walking up through a sewer system from the time of the second Beit Mikdash to the Kotel, to the Western Wall. So just if you're wondering. Chag Sameach.